All right, let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour, where Mamallapuram, which also goes by the name Mahabalipuram, in southern India, is gearing up to welcome the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, the temple town is hosting what is the second informal summit meeting between the Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, President Xi will be arriving in some time from now in the afternoon, and in the latest development there, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we are given to understand, has reached Mamallapuram. All right, now these are visuals from some time back where Prime Minister Narendra Modi had then at that time just landed in Chennai, and he of course was welcomed there. Now, the Chinese president will be landing in Tamil Nadu's capital Chennai, which is about 55 odd kilometers from Mamallapuram in some time from now, and Chennai has geared up to welcome Xi Jinping. Now, more than 1,000 school students formed President Xi's name in Mandarin, and they sat through as a part of the function wearing the mask of President Xi Jinping. There are also various cutouts of Xi Jinping were got ready, and children have also received masks, quite like what was witnessed in Gujarat, where the Narendra Modi masks had become a huge sensation at a point of time.
Don't sit down like that.
We are doing one program for the China presidents who are coming to India in Mahabalipuram, and we are Tamilians, so we are proud to do this program, and we love China, we love India.
Now, this is, of course, the second informal summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping. Remember, the first one was held on the 27th of April in 2018, where the heads of the two countries' governments had met to reset ties between India and China. And it is that spirit of Wuhan that is sought to be taken forward in terms of what is to play out in Mamallapuram today and tomorrow. Now, the two leaders will be taking forward the commitments decided by them back in Wuhan in 2018. Notably, the summit is, of course, taking place at a time when Pakistan, which calls China its all-weather ally, is trying to internationalize the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has been pushing Beijing for support on Jammu and Kashmir despite being isolated globally. Now, China, on the other hand, has done a bit of a balancing act. In a joint statement issued ahead of the meeting, Beijing has stressed on the importance of bilateral agreements, the United Nations Charter, and also the UNSC resolutions. Now, the US-China trade war is another issue that is likely to figure in the discussions. Meanwhile, some experts remain divided over the outcome of this summit, and it's going to be very interesting to see as to what will be hammered out as a part of the meeting that will take place between the two heads of the governments today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he'll be meeting with Xi Jinping in Mamallapuram in some time from now. All right, now for more on this, WION's Siddhant Civil is joining us live. Siddhant, this, of course, is a very important meeting. It is an informal summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping. And this, of course, will be their second informal summit. Now, help us understand what is an informal summit. How is it different from the other regular meetings that are also summit meetings between the two heads of governments?
Well, Mohammed, when it comes to informal summit, it lacks the usual protocol, the usual elements of a formal summit, which involves the welcoming reception, which we see usually at Rashtrapati Bhavan, and then of course MOUs being signed, agreements being signed, joint statements being delivered. Remember, from the Hyderabad House, and of course various call-ons. So basically, it is getting down to business on practical terms both leaders will be spending almost 6 hours together, 3 hours today and 3 hours tomorrow. Today, of course, we know that the Indian Prime Minister has landed, and shortly the Chinese President will be landing at around 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time here in Chennai, and from Chennai he will be coming to this town through road, by road, and then of course he will be joined by the Indian Prime Minister. The Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President will be going to the world-famous monuments, the heritage sites, whether it's the 5 Rathas or it's the Show Temple, which will be personally shown by the Indian Prime Minister, talking about the historical connect between this town and China. And then thereafter, there will be lunch. So approximately 3 hours together, and it will be very visually rich coverage, because we know that in Wuhan also we saw both leaders having conversations. We saw the visuals at the river, and today we will see rich visuals with the background of India's rich heritage, and of course the cultural and the trading connect between this town and China.
Absolutely, indeed. And also, Siddhant, considering the fact that this is the second informal summit between the two leaders, the first one took place in Wuhan in April 2018. It happened in the backdrop of the Doklam crisis, the flashpoint between India and China, the tri-junction along Sikkim. So what has changed since Wuhan? Because a lot of talk is around, taking the Wuhan spirit forward, but there are many sticking points between the India-China equation since Wuhan has taken place.
Wuhan, as you just mentioned, happened in the backdrop of Doklam, and since then both sides are making sure there's a concerted effort to make sure the ties between two large countries in Asia, India and China, are balanced. There are convergences in ties, and since then the momentum, both sides are hoping that this informal summit here in Mamallapuram will provide that momentum to continue forward, making sure that contentious issues are resolved. And the key takeaways from the Wuhan summit was the strategic guidance given by both the leaders to their armies. And since then there have been, of course, incursions, but that is because of the different perception of the line of actual control by both the Indian side and the Chinese side. So it has been sensibly managed by both sides, and there hasn't been repetition of Doklam. Another thing has been a trade issue, because on trade front we know India has been very vocal both privately and publicly about the trade deficit, which is almost $55 billion. So since Wuhan, the Chinese side has relented, allowed market access, especially to Indian agriculture goods, and India would like to see it transform into big and larger volumes so that trade deficit is reduced. India would also like to see pharma products, Indian pharma products, being given market access to China.
Absolutely, indeed, Siddhant. Just before I let you go, one of the contentious issues that may or may not come up for discussion is the fact that Pakistan, which calls China its all-weather friend, has been relying on China to try and internationalize the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Is that contentious issue likely to figure at all in the talks between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi?
Well, Mohammed, Kashmir is not going to be raised by India, because India has made it clear that Kashmir is an internal thing for India, and India is not going to raise it with any other country, even if it's China. And of course, even at multiple forums or major forums like the UNGA, we saw India not raising this issue because it's an internal issue for New Delhi. And before this summit, on the eve of the summit, we saw New Delhi giving a rap to both Beijing and Islamabad for raking it up in their joint statements. But if the Chinese president would like to understand Kashmir, what India did on 5th of August by revocation of the special status for the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, India will tell and reiterate what New Delhi has been saying, that it is to spur economic growth and make sure that the conditions weren't exploited by our neighbor Pakistan when it comes to increased cross-border terror. But contentious issues, majorly it will be trade, but of course on terror also, because this is something there is a difference of perception by both Beijing and New Delhi. While Beijing has been saying that Pakistan has been a victim of terrorism and has done a lot when it comes to terrorism in the region, Pakistan clearly does not have a positive image when it comes to terrorism. It still continues to support terrorists on its own territory. So these are some of the issues, but clearly on Kashmir, India is not going to raise it.
Absolutely, indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Siddhant, for joining us and getting us all those updates. We'll, of course, come back to you as the story unfolds through the day.
The two biggest countries of Asia, India and China, are all set to meet again, this time for the second informal summit in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu, in the historic city of Mamallapuram. Trade, terror and other global and regional issues will be on the table when the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Follow me, Siddhant Sibal, for all the live and latest updates on the big summit only on WION.